You've been taught all your life to calculate, to evaluate, to count the cost before you give, to keep score, to track favors and call in debts, to make sure you always get back what you gave. From your first school report to your last paycheck, the world has conditioned you to measure your worth by what comes back to you. But I am here to shatter that illusion. I am here to tell you that the fastest path to success, the deepest, most powerful kind of success is to give without expecting anything in return. That's right. Give freely. Give relentlessly. Give when no one is watching, no one is applauding, and no one seems to care. Because the man who can give without needing anything back is the man who becomes unstoppable. Why? Because he is driven not by reaction, but by intention. He does not give to manipulate, to impress, to be praised. He gives because giving is a reflection of who he is, and that kind of man, a man who creates value for the sake of principle, not profit, cannot be ignored forever. The tragedy is that most people stop just short. They work hard for a while, they serve for a season, but when the applause doesn't come fast enough, when the money doesn't arrive quickly, they pull back, they stop giving. They retreat into resentment, into bitterness, into what's in it for me. And that's when the dream dies. But you're not going to be like them. You're going to make a different decision. The decision to give, not as a tactic, but as a way of life. You see, the world doesn't reward desperation. It rewards value. The world doesn't chase the man who begs. It chases the man who builds. And you are a builder. You're building a life, a mission, a legacy that will outlast applause, outlast rejection, outlast misunderstanding. Because your worth isn't tied to who claps. Your worth is defined by how you carry yourself when no one is clapping at all. You must understand, giving is not about charity. Giving is about identity. Every day you show up with excellence, with presence, with effort. You are casting a vote for the kind of person you are becoming. When you give without expecting, you train your mind to operate from abundance instead of scarcity. You say to the world, and more importantly, to yourself, I don't need to be noticed to be valuable. I don't need to be paid to bring my best. I don't need a crowd to walk in purpose. And that mindset, that kind of spiritual independence is what attracts success. Because the people who matter, the opportunities that change your life, the results you've been chasing, they're not looking for someone needy. They're looking for someone rooted. Rooted in discipline. Rooted in vision. Rooted in a standard that doesn't change based on conditions. The man who gives without expecting is the man who becomes inevitable, because you cannot stop a man who doesn't need anything from you. You cannot manipulate him, distract him, or discourage him because he's not here for the outcome. He's here for the mission. Let's be clear. This is not about being passive. It's not about letting the world take advantage of you. It's about playing the long game. It's about giving when others quit. It's about over-delivering when others do the bare minimum. It's about holding your standard when no one is watching, because that's when it counts most. Anyone can give when the room is full. Anyone can shine when the spotlight is bright. But the men who change the world, they give when the room is empty. They shine when no one is watching. They do the work when there's no guarantee of return. Why? Because they know who they are. And knowing who you are is the ultimate power. So I ask you now, what are you waiting for? Are you waiting for validation? For the paycheck? For the opportunity? Or are you ready to create all of it by being the kind of man who gives first? That is the mark of true greatness. That is how you lead your life with integrity, with courage, with clarity. Think about it. When was the last time you truly gave something your all, even when you had nothing to gain? When was the last time you poured out your energy, your presence, your best work, not for praise, but because it was the right thing to do? That's the moment everything begins to shift. Because when you stop living in transaction, you start living in transformation. You are no longer operating on the level of, what can I get from this? You are operating on the level of, how can I leave this better than I found it? That mindset will elevate everything you touch. Your relationships will change. Your business will grow. Your influence will multiply. Because people are starving for authenticity, for depth, for someone who is not just playing the game, but raising the game. Be that person. Be the person who gives, because they've already decided who they are. Be the person who doesn't shrink when ignored, but expands. Be the person who leads with excellence, not for show, but for substance. And if you keep giving, if you keep pouring out your best without asking for a receipt, here's what will happen. Success will chase you. The results will catch up. The recognition will arrive. But by the time it does, it won't matter, because you'll be too busy building to care who's watching. You'll be too focused on the next act of service, the next opportunity to lead, the next moment to raise the standard, and that's when you become unshakable. That's when you become rare. And that's when the world finally sees what you've known all along. You didn't just give because it looked good. You gave because it was who you are. Most people misunderstand how true influence is created. They think it comes from speaking loudly, from pushing others to notice them, from forcing visibility. But influence, the lasting kind, comes from impact. And impact is created by giving when no one asks you to. It's forged when you walk into a room and elevate the atmosphere. Not with noise, but with presence, standards, with a kind of grounded character that can't be faked or fabricated because it's been earned. Let me tell you something that will change how you see the world from this moment forward. Every time you give your best, even in small acts, you're planting a seed of trust, a seed of excellence, a seed of mastery, a seed of value. And those seeds never die. They may remain unseen for a season, but when they bloom, they do so with force. You may feel today like your work goes unnoticed. You show up early, you stay late, you go the extra mile, and the world seems quiet. No applause, no promotion, no reward. But let me ask you, are you giving for the reward? Or are you giving because that's who you decided to be? Because here's the truth. The right people are always watching. They may not be clapping yet, but they are watching. And more importantly, your future is watching. The man you are becoming, he sees every moment you choose consistency over comfort. He sees every time you rise when quitting would be easier. He watches as you give without keeping score. And every time you make that choice, he nods in quiet approval. Because you are becoming him. Success is not a destination. It's not a trophy. It's not a finish line. Success is a consequence, the natural result of living in principle long enough that the world has no choice but to respond. And giving without expecting, that's one of the highest principles of them all. Because it's rare. Most people only move when there's a guaranteed outcome. But the man who gives without promise is the man who owns the process. He is not seduced by metrics. He is not addicted to applause. He is free. And freedom, real freedom, comes from self-leadership. You lead yourself when you don't feel like it. You lead yourself when it's inconvenient. You lead yourself when your mind wants to make excuses and you make decisions instead. Giving without expecting doesn't mean you don't value yourself. It means you value yourself so much that you don't need to be validated every time you show up. Because the man who validates himself can never be ignored forever. Your work is not a transaction. It is a transmission. It's sending a message to the world. This is the kind of excellence I stand for. And when you keep broadcasting that message, day in and day out, the people who need to hear it will find you. But first, you must outlast the silence. You must learn to love the hidden seasons. You must learn to show up even when the room is empty. Because giving is not just about others, it's about training your identity. Your habits shape your confidence. Your effort shapes your identity. Your consistency shapes your destiny. And when you give without needing a result, you tell yourself, I am not a puppet of praise. I am a producer of value. Do you understand the gravity of that shift? Because when you reach that level of clarity, your power multiplies. Suddenly you're not chasing clients, followers, status. You're creating so much momentum that those things begin to chase you. And you know what? They'll come faster and stronger than you imagine because you'll be the only one in a world full of takers who is still giving. But don't mistake giving for weakness. The weak man gives with strings attached. The strong man gives with no strings because he doesn't need to pull them later. That's power. That's leverage. That's leadership. Now, I'll tell you something personal. Some of the most powerful doors in my life opened not because I asked, but because I gave. I gave ideas when no one paid me. I gave solutions when no one was listening. I gave energy when I was tired. I gave respect when others mocked. And years later, those same people came back. Not to give me something out of pity, but because they finally saw what I always gave freely, my best. You don't need to manipulate people to get ahead. You don't need to scheme, beg, pretend. All you need to do is outgive everyone else. While they're taking shortcuts, you're building a fortress. While they're screaming for attention, you're earning reputation. While they're chasing trends, you're building timeless value. And eventually, everyone notices. Not because you shouted, but because you showed up. That's the power of living by principle. That's what separates the ones who last from the ones who flicker out. So let me ask you, what's one area in your life where you've been giving less than you're capable of? What's one place where you've started waiting for a reward before you return to excellence? And what would happen if you flipped the switch and started giving like everything depended on it? Because it does. The quality of your life, your income, your relationships, your influence is directly tied to how much undiluted value you bring to the world. And when you decide to give without demanding, without negotiating, you create a force so rare, so relentless, so magnetic that success can no longer pass you by. Because success, real success, doesn't chase noise. It chases substance. And substance is built in the quiet. When you pour out your best into people, places, and problems, even when no one's watching, so become that man, the man who shows up first, stays later, cares deeper, the man who never confuses applause with alignment, the man who doesn't let disappointment dull his discipline, the man who gives not because it's profitable, but because it's powerful. And soon you'll look up and realize something strange is happening. You're not chasing opportunity anymore. Opportunity is chasing you, not because you played the game perfectly, but because you played the long game consistently. And in a world full of fakers, that kind of consistency, that kind of authentic giving is impossible to ignore. You rise above the crowd not by shouting louder, but by standing taller in your principles. The world is filled with those who want immediate gratification. They expect a reward the second they lift a finger. But the man who walks in discipline, who gives with full integrity and no demand, and becomes the most dangerous man in the room because he cannot be controlled. You want to be unshakable? Then give with your spirit, not with strings. Give because you know that real builders never wait to be seen before they show up strong. It's in the giving, not the getting, that you shape your legacy. When you give without expectation, you say to life itself, I trust the process. I don't need to manipulate the timeline. I'm not hustling for validation. I'm delivering value because that is who I am. And that kind of conviction builds a gravitational pull around you. People notice, energy shifts, doors open. But not because you begged, because you built. You built a mindset that doesn't collapse under silence. You built a consistency that doesn't bend to mood. You built a spirit that isn't waiting for others to clap before you dance. And now, you're not asking, when will it happen? You're living like it already. Island, because success doesn't just reward effort, it rewards alignment. When who you are, what you give, and what you believe are all in agreement, your very existence becomes a message. And that message spreads further than any advertisement ever could. People start talking about you in rooms you've never entered. Not because you asked them to, but because you made yourself unforgettable. Not through gimmicks, not through noise, but through realness. You showed up when others were tired. You delivered when others complained. You stood tall when others buckled. And eventually they couldn't ignore you, if they tried. You must understand, every act of giving without expectation strengthens your internal armor. And that armor is what keeps you moving when the road gets hard. Because the road will get hard. People will take without thanking. Opportunities will delay. Misunderstandings will come. But if you're rooted in who you are, you don't need everything to go right. You just need to stay right. And right means you honor your standards whether they see you or not. You will be the one who over-delivers. You will be the one who shows grace when others show ego. You will be the one who plays the long game while others fold at the first sign of resistance. And yes, there will be days when it feels like you're the only one carrying the weight. But remember, the weight is what makes you strong. The repetition is what makes you refined. And the giving is what makes you rare. You don't become unforgettable by chasing the crowd. You become unforgettable by leading without being asked. That's the difference between the average man and the great one. The average man waits for a role to be assigned. The great man takes ownership before anyone gives him permission. You don't need to be given a title to lead. You don't need a spotlight to shine. You don't need applause to walk in confidence. Because the moment you begin to outgive the room, you own the room. So what does this look like? It looks like reaching out to serve when there's nothing in it for you. It looks like refining your craft even when no one pays you to. It looks like showing up early, staying focused, and executing without complaint. Because every time you act that way, you're separating yourself from the sea of mediocrity. And you're stepping into a realm very few are willing to enter, the realm of self-determined excellence. Excellence not driven by the scoreboard. Excellence driven by standards. And let me make something clear. Excellence is never accidental. It is the byproduct of intention, focus, and a relentless decision to serve without settling. If you want people to see you as irreplaceable, start acting like you already are. Start giving as if the world is waiting for your next move, because it is. The man who gives beyond what's expected becomes the man who sets the new expectation. You raise the bar just by being in the room. That is how influence is born. Not through demand, but through demonstration. Because when you give, you're not just building a reputation. You're building trust. And trust is the most valuable currency in existence. It's trust that makes people return to you. It's trust that multiplies your impact. It's trust that creates legacy. And trust is only built one way, by giving when it's hard. When it's hidden, when it's thankless, when you do that, when you become that, the reward doesn't just arrive. The reward becomes you. You walk into a room and don't need to introduce yourself. You don't need to pitch, posture, or persuade. Your energy speaks before you open your mouth. Why? Because it's backed by a track record of service. You didn't ask. You acted. You didn't beg. You built. And now the harvest is finding you, not because you chased it, but because you became worthy of it. That's what giving without expectation really means. It means you put deposits into the world, into people, into your craft, and you let time do what it does best. It multiplies what you were bold enough to plant. So plant boldly. Serve with no scoreboard. Give with no leash. And soon you look around and realize you've created something more powerful than success. You've created significance. And significance lasts longer than any trend, any applause, any short-term win. Significance is felt long after you leave the room. Because you didn't just deliver results. You delivered a presence. And that presence came from years of choosing to be excellent when no one required it. That's how you make success chase you. You become the kind of person it cannot resist. There is a level of power you reach when you give more than anyone expects and expect nothing in return. That's when you stop negotiating with life and instead you begin leading it. You become magnetic, not because of charm or noise, but because of who you become in silence. You've risen above reaction. You've detached from reward. And because of that, reward begins to chase you on its own. This is what it means to be a leader of destiny. You move from transactional thinking into transformational living. Now let's get real. This mindset will cost you. It will cost you ego. It will cost you validation. It will cost you the need to constantly be recognized. But what you get in return, that's the rare prize. That's peace. That's clarity. That's the unshakable belief that your work, your effort, your impact is bigger than approval. Because the man who gives from purpose rather than pressure becomes a force so powerful, he doesn't chase success. He creates environments where success is drawn to him. You must understand, everyone around you is watching how you behave when you don't get what you think you deserve. When the praise doesn't come, when the deal falls through, when your best effort is met with silence, that moment, the moment you're tempted to pull back, is the same moment the great ones lean in. Because they know that character is not built when things are going well. It's built when they give anyway. This is the greatest test of all. Can you give at your highest level when you have the lowest energy? Can you lead with vision when the path is foggy? Can you show up with excellence when mediocrity would be forgiven? If you can, you'll join the ranks of the very few who don't just build success, they become it. Here's a truth that will free you. People don't give you opportunities. Your energy does. Your value does. Your presence does. Because when people feel that you're already full of vision, full of discipline, full of certainty, they want to be around that. They want to be near you. So stop waiting to be chosen. You are not waiting for your moment. You are creating it with every act of unrelenting, quiet, consistent giving. That is how the tables turn. That is how the tides shift. That is how a man goes from being invisible to irresistible. Because you don't chase what you are. And when you become value, you don't need to prove value. It speaks for itself. Let me remind you, there is nothing more expensive than waiting for permission. There is nothing more destructive than tying your worth to applause. And there is nothing more powerful than giving like you've already won, because in doing so you have. You've won your freedom. You've won your purpose. You've won the game that most people never even learn the rules of. The man who gives without needing is the man who leads without force, because he doesn't need to take control. He already has it over his mind, over his emotions, over his identity. This is the secret the world keeps hidden. People don't follow titles, they follow energy. They follow the man who keeps showing up at full volume when everyone else gets quiet. They follow the man who raises the standard without raising his voice. They follow the man who doesn't need to ask for trust because he's earned it. And how do you earn that trust? By showing the world who you are when it seems like no one is watching. Give anyway. Serve anyway. Build anyway. Because someone is watching. Your future self is watching. And every time you choose to over-deliver, you build a stronger version of that man. That's the only man you should ever be competing with. Not the influencer online. Not the businessman down the street. Not the coworker with more recognition. Your only competition is the version of you who knows how great you can be and is waiting for you to act like it. You win that competition through service, through focus, through the daily and visible disciplined choice to be excellent without excuse. Now let's look forward. What would your life look like if you spent the next 30 days giving more than anyone expects at home, at work, in your health, in your relationships? What if you trained your spirit to give like you already have everything you need? Because you do. You don't need to be made complete. You need to be unleashed. And the fastest way to do that? Give without fear. Give without hesitation. Give without needing to be seen. Because the moment you stop trying to be impressive, you become influential. And influence lasts longer than applause. It echoes. It expands. It lifts others. And it builds legacy. You were never meant to be a beggar of attention. You were designed to be a beacon of value. That means you shine whether they acknowledge it or not. You serve whether they appreciate it or not. You give whether they reciprocate or not. And here's the best part. When you become a person of that kind of principle, the people who matter most find their way to you. The right partnerships, the right opportunities, the right audience. They are not drawn to desperation. They are drawn to your devotion, to your consistency, to your courage to show up without a safety net. That's when your name gets mentioned in rooms you've never entered. That's when your ideas get carried further than you ever thought possible. That's when success stops being something you chase and becomes something you embody, because you no longer wait to be seen. You are the light, and you don't need to be seen to keep shining. So let this be your reminder. Keep going. Keep giving. Keep showing up when it's hard, when it's silent, when it's uncomfortable. Because every act of unselfish excellence you choose today builds the future you're walking into tomorrow. Not by force, but by faith. Not by taking, but by trusting. Not by playing small, but by living big. With your energy, your vision, your service. That's how success finds you. Because the man who gives without demanding becomes the man who has everything others are searching for. But he didn't find it in the noise. He found it in the giving. And now, he doesn't need to chase success. Success chases him.